The range was quiet at 0530. Fort Benning's long-distance qualification course stretched across the Georgia hills. Targets positioned at intervals most shooters never attempted. The air was cool, heavy with morning dew that settled on metal and grass alike. Staff Sergeant Maya Chen stood at the firing line, her Barrett M82A1 resting on its bipod. She was checking windage, adjusting scope elevation, moving through the pre-fire checklist with the kind of precision that looked unremarkable to anyone watching. Which was the point. Behind her, a group of officers had gathered for the quarterly marksmanship demonstration. 3 colonels, 2 majors, and General Wade Morrison, a man whose career had been built on infantry command and close quarters doctrine. He believed in boots on the ground, not distance shooting. He'd said as much in a briefing 2 months prior. Morrison walked along the firing line, hands clasped behind his back, observing the weapon systems laid out for review. He paused at the Barrett, glanced at Chen briefly, then continued past her without comment. One of the colonels leaned toward him. "Sir, that's the 50 cal demonstration." "I see it," Morrison replied. His tone was neutral, but the lack of interest was clear. Chen didn't turn. She adjusted her scope one more time, checked the ammunition feed, and settled into position. The target at 1,800 meters was visible through her scope. Standard qualification. She'd done this dozens of times. The range officer's voice came through the radio. "Firing line is hot. Commence at will." Chen exhaled slowly, found her natural respiratory pause, and squeezed. The Barrett roared, recoil absorbed through her shoulder, muzzle brake redirecting the blast. Downrange. The steel target rang, the impact visible even without magnification. Behind her, light conversation continued. Someone mentioned breakfast. Another officer checked his watch. Chen cycled the bolt, chambered the next round, and fired again. Another hit, then another. 5 rounds, 5 impacts, all center mass at 1,800 meters. The range officer's voice crackled. Target confirmed. All hits recorded. Morrison glanced back briefly. "Standard qualification distance?" "Yes, sir," the range officer replied. The general nodded and turned to leave. The demonstration was over as far as he was concerned. Then one of the majors spoke up. "Sir, there's an extended range portion. If you have a moment." Morrison stopped. "How extended?" 3,200 meters, sir." The general's expression didn't change, but his eyes shifted back toward the firing line. "That's beyond effective range for personnel targets." "It's a vehicle target, sir. Simulated engine block." Morrison looked at Chen, who was already transitioning to the next firing position. She moved efficiently, no wasted motion, repositioning the Barrett on a different section of the line where the angle accommodated the extreme distance. "Who's shooting?" Morrison asked. "Staff Sergeant Chen, sir." The general's jaw tightened slightly. He didn't say anything, but he didn't leave either. Chen settled into position. The 200-meter target wasn't visible to the naked eye. Even through the scope, it required precise calculation. Wind speed at multiple altitudes, air density, Coriolis effect, temperature gradient. She'd calculated it all before dawn, rechecked it twice, and committed the numbers to memory. The range officer spoke through the radio. "Firing line is hot. Extended range target is live." Chen made one final adjustment to her scope. The wind had shifted slightly in the last 10 minutes. She compensated, adding half a mil dot to her windage. Then she fired. The sound echoed across the valley. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the radio crackled. "Impact confirmed. Target hit." One of the colonels muttered something under his breath. Morrison didn't move. Chen cycled the bolt, exhaled, and fired again. "Impact confirmed." And again. "Impact confirmed." 3 rounds. 3 hits at 3,200 meters. The officers behind her had gone quiet. Morrison stepped forward, moving closer to the firing line. He stopped a few feet behind Chen, watching as she cleared the weapon, made it safe, and stood. She turned, standing at ease, eyes forward. Morrison looked at her, then at the Barrett, then back at her. "How long have you been shooting long distance, Staff Sergeant?" 11 years, sir." "And the 3,200-meter qualification?" "I hold the current course record, sir. Set it 14 months ago." Morrison's eyes narrowed slightly. The course record. Yes, sir. He stepped closer to the weapon, examining the scope, the position, the setup. Then he noticed the patch on her sleeve. Small, subdued, easy to miss. A sniper badge with a specialized designation beneath it. 3,200 men qualified. He stared at it for a long moment. Why wasn't I briefed on this capability? He asked quietly. Chen didn't answer. That question wasn't for her. One of the colonels stepped forward. Sir, Staff Sergeant Chen's been with the unit for 3 years. She's qualified on every platform we have. The extended range program isn't commonly utilized, so Morrison cut him off. So we've had a 3,200-meter asset on base, and no one thought to include it in tactical planning. The colonel hesitated. Sir, the doctrine for long-distance support hasn't been prioritized in recent operations. Morrison turned back to Chen. How many qualified shooters do we have at this range? In this battalion, sir? Just me? In the brigade? 2 others, Mouse, sir, but neither is currently active duty. Morrison absorbed that. His expression was unreadable, but the silence stretched longer than it needed to. Finally, he spoke. Staff Sergeant, I want a brief on effective deployment scenarios for extended range support. 1,400 hours, my office. Yes, sir. He turned to the colonels. I also want a full audit of specialized qualifications across the brigade. If we have capabilities we're not using, I need to know. The officers exchanged glances but said nothing. Morrison looked back at Chen one more time. Good shooting, Staff Sergeant. Thank you, sir. He walked away, his pace measured, his posture unchanged. But something had shifted. The conversation behind him was quieter now, more careful. Chen knelt down, began breaking down the Barrett, field stripping it with the same precision she'd used to fire it. The morning sun was higher now, burning off the dew. One of the majors approached. That was impressive, Sergeant. She didn't look up. Just doing the job, sir. Still, not many people can make that shot. Chen finished disassembling the bolt carrier group, wiped it down, and reassembled it in silence. When she finally stood, the major was still there. Sir, if there's nothing else, there isn't, he said. Carry on. She packed the rifle case, slung it over her shoulder, and walked off the range. Behind her, the officers were still talking, voices low, words clipped. By noon, the story had circulated through the battalion. By evening, it had reached division headquarters. At 1400 hours, Chen stood outside General Morrison's office, her uniform pressed, her briefing notes organized in a slim folder. She knocked once. Enter. Morrison sat behind his desk. A topographical map spread in front of him. He gestured to the chair across from him. Sit. She did. For a moment, he said nothing, just studied the map. Then he looked up. I've been in the infantry for 26 years. Staff Sergeant. I've planned operations on 4 continents, and in all that time, I've never once considered using a sniper at 3,200 meters. Chen waited. That's a failure on my part, he continued. Not yours. She didn't respond. Responses weren't required. Morrison leaned back. Walk me through it. Effective scenarios. Limitations. Deployment requirements. Chen opened her folder and began. She spoke for 20 minutes. No embellishment. No technical jargon beyond what was necessary. She outlined vehicle interdiction, infrastructure denial, high-value target observation, and psychological impact. She explained ammunition logistics, environmental factors, and the training pipeline required to maintain the capability. Morrison listened without interrupting. When she finished, he nodded slowly. How many shooters would you need to establish a battalion-level capability? 4, sir, 2 primary, 2 in rotation. Training timeline? 18 months to full qualification, assuming candidates already have advanced marksmanship backgrounds. Morrison made a note on his pad. I'll authorize it. Chen blinked once, but her expression didn't change. Yes, sir. You'll lead the program, he added. Report directly to me on progress. Understood, sir. He closed the folder in front of him. Dismissed. She stood, saluted, and turned to leave. Staff Sergeant. She stopped. I walked past you this morning, Morrison said. That was a mistake. Chen met his eyes. No mistake, sir, just routine. Morrison's expression softened slightly. Not much, just enough. Routine for you, maybe. She said nothing. Carry on, he said. Chen left the office, the door closing softly behind her. 3 weeks later, the first candidates reported for extended range training. 6 soldiers, all experienced shooters, all selected based on performance records and psychological evaluations. Chen stood at the range, the Barrett already set up, targets positioned at intervals from 1,000 to 3,200 meters. She didn't give a speech. She didn't explain the philosophy of long-distance shooting or the importance of the program. She just fired. 1 round, 3,200 meters, center mass. The candidates watched in silence. Then she stepped back and gestured to the firing line. Your turn. By the end of the first week, 2 had dropped out. By the end of the first month, 2 more. The remaining 2 stayed. One of them, a corporal named Davis, hit the 3,200-meter target on his 43rd attempt. He stood up, breathing hard, adrenaline shaking through him. Chen handed him a bottle of water. Again, he fired 47 more times before he hit it a second time. Again, Chen said. 6 months later, Davis made the shot on his first attempt. Chen didn't congratulate him. She just nodded and moved him to the next phase. The training progressed methodically. Chen ran each candidate through wind reading drills, temperature compensation calculations, and stress fire scenarios. She didn't rush them. She didn't coddle them either. During one exercise, Davis missed 12 consecutive shots at 2,800 meters. He slammed his fist against the ground in frustration. Chen waited until he'd finished, then spoke. What changed between shot 6 and shot 7? Davis looked up, breathing hard. I don't know. Wind shifted 4 degrees northeast. You didn't adjust. I didn't feel it. Then you weren't paying attention. Davis started to argue, then stopped. Chen was already setting up for the next drill. By month 9, both remaining candidates could consistently hit targets at 2,400 meters. By month 12, they'd extended to 2,800. The final phase, full 3,200-meter qualification, took another 6 months of incremental progress, failure, recalibration, and repetition. When Davis finally passed his qualification trial, hitting the 3,200-meter target 5 times in a row under timed conditions, Chen made a single notation in her logbook. Then she moved to the next item on the training schedule. Davis waited for some acknowledgement. When none came, he asked, Is that it? Chen looked up from her notes. You passed. That's it. Don't we get a ceremony or something? You get orders, Chen said. Ceremonies for retirement. The second candidate, a sergeant named Ortiz, qualified 3 weeks later. She was quieter than Davis, more methodical. When she completed her final trial, she simply nodded at Chen and began breaking down her rifle. Chen appreciated that. A year and a half after that morning on the range, the Extended Range Sniper program was officially integrated into brigade doctrine. 4 qualified shooters, deployment-ready assets, logged and available for tactical planning. General Morrison attended the final qualification exercise. He stood at the observation post, watching through binoculars as Chen and Davis took turns engaging targets at maximum range. Every shot connected. When it was over, Morrison walked down to the firing line. He looked at Chen, then at Davis, then at the Barrett resting between them. Well done, he said. Chen stood at ease. Thank you, sir. Morrison turned to leave, then paused. Staff Sergeant, one more thing. Sir, I'm recommending you for the Instructor of Excellence Award. Chen's expression didn't change. That's not necessary, sir. It's already done, Morrison replied. He walked away, boots crunching on gravel, his silhouette fading into the afternoon light. Davis looked at Chen. You're not going to say anything? Chen knelt down and began field stripping the Barrett. Nothing to say. He just gave you an award. He gave the program recognition, Chen corrected. That's different. Davis watched her work for a moment, then knelt down to help. They cleaned the rifles in silence, the wind carrying the smell of gunpowder and dust across the empty range. 2 months later, Chen received deployment orders. A joint task force operation in the Horn of Africa. Duration classified. Mission parameters classified. Only the departure date was confirmed. She packed her gear the night before, double-checking her equipment list, ensuring every item was accounted for. The Barrett was already crated and secured for transport. At 0400, she reported to the airfield. Davis and Ortiz were already there, standing near the transport plane. Morrison was there too, speaking quietly with the task force commander. When he saw Chen, he walked over. "Staff Sergeant." "Sir, everything in order?" "Yes, sir." Morrison glanced toward the plane, then back at her. "They're expecting you to perform at distance. Don't let them down." "I won't, sir." He extended his hand. She shook it once, firmly. "Good luck," he said. Chen boarded the plane, found her seat, and secured her gear. Through the window, she watched the sky begin to lighten, the base slowly waking around them. The engines roared to life. The plane taxied, turned, and accelerated down the runway. As they climbed through the morning clouds, Chen closed her eyes and ran through her pre-mission checklist one more time. Wind tables, ballistic coefficients, equipment status, ammunition count. Everything was in order. 3 weeks later, in a desert compound 7,000 miles from Fort Benning, Chen lay prone on a ridgeline, her Barrett trained on a convoy moving through the valley below. Distance, 3,180 meters. Wind, variable, gusting northeast. Temperature, 104 degrees Fahrenheit. The radio crackled in her ear. Overwatch, confirm position on primary target. Chen adjusted her scope, tracking the lead vehicle. Primary confirmed. Clear shot. Stand by. She waited, breathing steady, finger resting lightly on the trigger guard. Overwatch, you are cleared hot. Chen exhaled, found her pause, and squeezed. The Barrett fired. 3 seconds later, the lead vehicle's engine block shattered, the convoy grinding to a halt. Impact confirmed, the radio said. Excellent work, Overwatch. Chen cycled the bolt, already scanning for secondary targets. Behind her, Davis spoke quietly. That's the longest confirmed hit of the deployment. Chen didn't respond. She was already calculating wind drift for the next shot. 6 months later, she returned to Fort Benning. The deployment had been successful, objectives achieved, personnel accounted for. She filed her after-action reports, attended the mandatory debriefings, and returned to her duties. General Morrison called her into his office 3 days after her return. "Staff Sergeant Chen, reporting as ordered, sir." Morrison gestured to a chair. "Sit." She did. He slid a folder across the desk. "Read this." Chen opened it. Inside was a commendation letter, detailing the task force's performance metrics. Her name appeared in multiple sections, each referencing extended range engagements and their operational impact. She read it without expression, then closed the folder. "Sir?" Morrison leaned back. "The task force commander wants you assigned to his unit permanently. He's requesting a transfer." Chen waited. "I'm denying it," Morrison continued. "You're more valuable here, training the next generation." "Understood, sir." Morrison studied her for a moment. "You don't seem disappointed." "No reason to be, sir. Both are good assignments." He smiled faintly. "Most soldiers would prefer deployment. Most soldiers aren't training others to deploy, sir." Morrison nodded slowly. "Fair point." He stood, and Chen stood with him. "Carry on, Staff Sergeant." "Yes, sir." She left the office, returned to the range, and resumed training. Davis and Ortiz were already there, running new candidates through preliminary drills. Chen watched from the observation tower, noting each shooter's form, tracking their progress, making mental notes on areas requiring correction. At 1700 hours, she called an end to the day's training. The candidates secured their weapons and departed. Davis and Ortiz stayed behind to help clean up. "Staff Sergeant," Ortiz said, "we heard you turned down the transfer." Chen checked the ammunition count on one of the Barretts. "I didn't turn it down." "The general did." "Still, you could have requested it." "Could have." Chen agreed. Davis spoke up. "So why didn't you?" Chen finished her count, logged the numbers, and looked at them both. "Because this matters more." She gestured toward the range, the target standing silent in the fading light. "Every shooter we train is a capability we didn't have before. That's worth more than any single deployment." Davis and Ortiz exchanged glances, but said nothing. Chen secured the last rifle case and headed toward the armory. They followed in silence. As the sun set over Fort Benning, the range fell quiet once more. Targets stood waiting for the next day's training. Equipment was secured. Records were filed. And somewhere in the gathering darkness, the wind shifted direction, carrying with it the faint smell of gunpowder and Georgia clay. Chen walked back to her quarters, her stride steady, her mind already preparing for the next morning's drills. Behind her, the range lights flickered on, casting long shadows across the empty firing line. Tomorrow, more candidates would arrive, more training would begin, more capabilities would be built, and through it all, Chen would be there, doing what she'd always done, the work. If this story resonated with you, don't scroll past. Real competence doesn't demand attention. It earns respect through results. Subscribe to see more stories where merit speaks louder than noise, and share this to remind someone that skill always finds its moment, because the truth doesn't need applause. It just needs to be witnessed.